Respected elders, dear younger ones, brothers and sisters in Islam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Continue to understand and learn and practice the teachings of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. We find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah An-Nisa verse 36 states of the rights and responsibilities and the duties that every single individual has in this world. He mentions those rights as the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us and the rights of others upon us. Haqqullah wa haqqun nas. He first states, وَعْبُدُ اللَّهِ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. First and foremost duty to worship and obey only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to not associate anything other than Him. Then he mentions those who have rights upon us, those we must show goodness and kindness towards. For example, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ, towards the parents, towards the near relatives. Then he mentions regards to the jar, al-jar. Two forms of jar are mentioned, the near one and the distance one. Bil-qurba wa bil-jar. And Mufassirin state that when it comes to the neighbor, the jar mentioned here, the qurba, the near one, and the distant one, there are a number of understandings. One is that the neighbor can have a number of rights upon you. There may be your next door neighbor in distance. They have one right upon you. There may be your neighbor in the area and they have another right upon you, is that they share the same faith as you. They are Muslim neighbor. They also have another added right upon you. They are your brother in faith. They may be your neighbor and live in that close proximity and of the same faith as you, and also be your relative. Sometimes it happens in the same street, your uncle lives. In the same street, your auntie lives. Your grandparents live. Your cousins live. They have an extra added right upon you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the jar, that both forms of neighbors have a right upon us, and we have to show kindness and goodness towards them. Be good towards our neighbors. In the recent pandemic, in the last few years, we found the importance of having good neighbors. There were elders, or the sick amongst us, or the ones who had reduced mobility. Simple things that we used to take for granted, they were unable to do. And they needed the help and assistance of good neighbors. And therefore you find, for example, groups started to form. For example, certain neighborhoods would have a group of volunteers who would help for simple tasks like grocery shopping for the neighbor, like providing and bringing medication towards their neighbor, like a simple few minutes of a chit-chat session with their neighbor. The neighbor was all alone at home and they needed someone to speak to. They felt real difficult for those moments that they were in the stage that they couldn't leave the home. They needed someone to speak to. Or some certain assistance with certain duties. Neighbors and good volunteers were available. And in the contrast, sometimes you read about certain neighbors and you can't fathom where the care and consideration and kindness is. That sometimes people have no idea who their neighbor is. Sometimes people realize that their neighbor is in danger. Their neighbor needs help and assistance. And those lock their door away and don't help their neighbor. I was recently reading in an article in a newspaper that a neighbor found that their fellow neighbor, a person found that their neighbor passed away after a few days of the smell of the decomposition of the body in the neighbor's home. that no one contacted the ambulance, no one contacted the police, no one asked what's happened to our neighbor, what's the news of our neighbor, where is he, why is he not leaving the home, what's happened. After a few days of him passing away, they realized. And that is what Islam states, that we should be the good neighbor, a neighbor who takes care and considers the importance of the duties and respect towards their neighbors. And of course, when we mention neighbor, does not mean your next door neighbor. The hadith states neighbor 40 homes this way, 40 homes this way, 40 homes this way, that your neighborhood have a right and duty of care towards them. Of course, that's in regarding towards your neighbor in terms of the homing, the residence. We also have the neighbor in terms of the one sitting beside you. One should show respect and kindness towards. The neighbor when you're in the journey that you're moving, in a journey, and you have a neighbor in your journey with you, show some care and consideration. But the teachings that we wish to understand today, the lessons that we wish to understand today, is the importance of the neighbor of residence. Because we have seen many times, and we've seen those shows, Neighbours from Hell, that people have complained so much about the difficulty of a certain neighbor, that this neighbor was truly giving me a hell time, a time of hell. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even think. I couldn't reflect. There was so much trespassing upon my property, and therefore I would consider them as neighbor from hell. Hence you find the Holy Prophet would state, Mal'oonun, Mal'oon, Mal'oon, curse and curse of Allah upon the one who adha jara, upon the one who hurts and annoys their, troubles their neighbor, harms their neighbor. Before one moves into a residence, in fact, we are recommended that before I move into a house, before I buy a house or rent a house, I should do a bit of homework. Understand about the place that I'm staying, but not only about the place that I'm staying in, also ask about the neighbors. The narration states, Sal anil jar qabla shira'id dar. Ask about who the neighbors are. Have a little consideration. What are the neighbors? Where are they? Who are they? Are they caring? Are they kind? Do they know who they are? Therefore you find two examples. That the home of a certain individual, it increased in the price because of the neighbor that he was with. On one occasion, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq sallallahu wasallam alayhi visited his neighbor who recently moved in. He asked his neighbor, this home that you've bought, for how much did you buy it? He said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I bought it, for example, for this many dinars. Imam said, this house is not worth this much, the value of this house. He said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, sharaytul mujawara. The very fact that I bought this house was because I've become the neighbor of Ja'far al-Sadiq. Where in this world would I have the honor of being the neighbor of the grandson of Rasulullah? I valued this house being higher than what it is because of who I am going to be the neighbor of the grandson of Rasulullah. Abdullah ibn Ja'far, the cousin of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the son of Ja'far al-Tayyar, as we know him, Ja'far the son of Abu Talib, his son Abdullah, he also realized that people were buying homes beside them, beside the Ahlul Bayt, with the same notion, Sharaitul Mujawara, that we bought this house for higher than what it was truly valued because the great notion of being in a vicinity, in a neighborhood of those awliya of Allah. That's when we move in to a house. When we actually have that home, what are the considerations towards the neighbor? Number one, never to harm and trouble our neighbor. Never to be disrespectful towards our neighbor. The Imam state, for example, that ma amana bi one does not believe in the Holy Prophet, is not a true believer, does not truly have iman, one who sleeps and his neighbor sleeps hungry. ما آمن بي من نام من بات شبعان وجاره جائع. One who sleeps at night and he's satisfied himself, he's taken care of himself, whilst at the same time his neighbor is hungry. Said Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum once sent a messenger. This story many of us have heard of, and it's good to remind myself and us all in the holy month of Ramadan. He had a neighbor, he had a complaint in the neighborhood. Said Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum, the alim of the time, he sent a complaint to Sayyid Amli. And that messenger went to Sayyid Amli, knocked on the door. It was the time of having lunch. He said Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum has a message for you. And he will not have his lunch until you approach him and sit down with him. He said, Khair, must be such an important message. Must be an emergency. What's happened? The alim stood up. He was an alim, fadil. What's happened? He stood, he went to the house of Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum. Sayyid Mahdi looked at him. He said, do you believe in Allah? He said, yes. Do you believe in the Quran? He said, yes. Do you believe in the Ahlul Bayt? He said, yes. He said, do you believe in their teachings? He said, yes. He said, oh, said Amali, your neighbor, the husband and wife, the neighbor that are there, for the last few weeks, they have been going to the simple grocery stores and buying food on credit. And now they are so much in debt that they have no money to buy the food. And the grocery store says, you are so much in debt, I can't continue to give this debt. And they are hungry day and night, your own neighbor. Immediately, what did he say? And some of us may have said this before. I have no idea, I had no idea. The Sayyid said, the fact that you have no idea is what upsets me. Of course, if you had known and you didn't take care of them, that in itself was one of the most sinful acts of not considering and taking care of your neighbor. But the fact that you have no idea of what's going on in your neighbor's lives, taking care of them, being of considerate support. He said, here is some monthly support, give for them, take care of them, and be of those who are care and kind towards their neighbors. Or you find during the time of the Holy Messenger, a man came to the Holy Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, I have a complaint to you about my neighbor. The Holy Prophet said, Sabr, sabr, be patient. One of the best forms of being a good neighbor is to be patient, sabr. Be patient, ala adai. Be patient upon what they are harming and troubling you. After some time of being patient, he came again to Rasulullah. Ya Rasulullah, ashku ilayk. I complained to you about this neighbor. He's harmful. He's annoying. He's being troublesome towards me. The Holy Prophet said, again, be patient. Try to be patient. Be patient towards me. The third time, after constant advice to that individual and constant advice to the neighbor, the Holy Prophet said to him, when he came to the complaint again the third time, he said, okay, on this occasion, now that you have given him so much patience and you have been so much being considerate, now I want you to do something. When you go home, put all of your luggage and the furniture, put it outside in the street. He said, okay. He went home, put the luggage and the furniture in the pathway in the street. Everyone who would walk past in the neighborhood would say, what kind of neighbor is this man? He's not taking care of his neighbor. What kind of neighbor is taking care of his neighbor? What kind of neighbor has been so harmful towards his neighbor that his luggage and everything, his furniture is outside? So much so that that neighbor realized the harm that he was doing towards his neighbor, and he came to him asking for forgiveness. Forgive me, take all your luggage back. I've had enough of people complaining and cursing and saying la'na upon me. Bring them back, and I will no longer do what I was doing. Now, when it comes to care and consideration towards our neighbor, towards our jar. We notice the hadith from the beloved Siddiqa Tahra Fatima al-Zahra alayha afdalus salatu wassalam, who in her du'as and prayers, she would pray for her neighbors before herself. She would pray and recite du'a for others. A sense of what? Altruism. A sense of self-sacrifice. A sense of thinking of others, prioritizing others before ourselves. She would state, Al-jar, thumma ad-dar. First others, then your own self. Then when it comes to the rights and responsibilities and duties towards the neighbor, ahsin al-mujawara. The Imam says, be best in your care and consideration and kinship and kindness towards your neighbors. For example, they state that we shouldn't trespass into their property without their permission. Islamic teachings over 1,400 years ago would give us the importance of taking care of the neighbors. Nowadays we see certain rules and regulations, neighborhood watch, and certain importance that even when Islam taught us years ago that when you build your home, make sure it's in a way that you're not overseeing the private property of your neighbor. Nowadays, when you want to build a house or build an apartment, you have to get a council permission. You have to get the permission from the local authority. Islam taught this many years ago, that you need the permission, the rights of your neighbors, take care of the consideration of your neighbors. Islam states, for example, when it comes to noise, making noise, sometimes even people think that just because it's Islamic, we can do whatever we want till midnight, 2 a.m. We'll blast the latmiya, we'll blast the Quran, we'll blast the anashid, because it's halal, it's fine. No, you have neighbors, take care of them. Consider their rights. They have children, they have young children, they have times that they are sleeping, they are asleep. You have to show respect and adab towards one another. When it comes to kindness, sometimes someone's a neighbor of another, he says, MashaAllah, they're cooking some lovely food, I can smell the baklawa, I can smell. No, sometimes we should also knock on their door and offer them and provide for them and think of them. Say, Alhamdulillah, today we have prepared for the month of Ramadan. This is an offering, especially when it comes to the days of celebration, the days of joy, the days of remembrance of the milad of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. In itself is a reflection of the teachings of Islam, that here I am providing for you all, remembering of you all. I would like you to share with us in this celebration. I would like to share this joyful occasion with you all. Well, the hadith says, when they are in difficulty, assist them. When they are in need, help them. When they come and ask for your assistance, go towards their help. When they are sick, visit them. When they pass away, even when they have passed away, go to their janazah ceremony, go to their funeral ceremony. Whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, Islam teaches us about the rights of the neighbor, the responsibilities and duties we have towards our neighbor, the respect that we should show towards our neighbor. How many times has it been that we've received complaints from our neighbors? Not necessarily neighbors at home, neighbors of the mosque, neighbors of the Husayniyah, neighbors of the Islamic Center, that there was no care, there was no consideration, there was no thought about your neighbors. No, we should show the true teachings of Islam, the true teachings of the akhlaq of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, salawatullah wa salamu alayhim ajma'een. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Who showed love and care and consideration towards their neighbor. And that's why we should highlight the importance of having good neighbors in this world. And having good neighbors in this world is a ni'mah, is a blessing. And if we have those neighbors who are difficult, who are troublesome, think of it as a trial, as an imtihan in this world. Bear patience towards them and tolerate them. And you be ahsan, you be better, you be good towards them, even though they may be difficult towards you. We wish to have good neighbors in this world, correct? We wish to have the best of neighbors in our residence, in our home, where we're moving towards, from one place to another. In fact, not only we want to have good neighbors in this world, when we wish to go into our qabr, everyone's going to go into the qabr. We also want to have good neighbors towards my left, towards my right. That's why many of us, we wish that we are buried where? By the one who is titled Ali ibn Abi Talib, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Sayyid al-Wasiyin. Some of the mu'mineen here know another title, Ya Hami al-Jar. Ali ibn Abi Talib is the one who takes great consideration and protection of his neighbors. Many mu'mineen in Arabia, many mu'mineen around the world, in fact, they say, when I pass away, carry and raise my janazah and take it on the journey for me to be buried beside Amir al-Mu'mineen. Where? In Wadi Salam. I wish to be a jar of Amir al-Mu'mineen in my qabr. I want to be buried beside someone who will give me barakah, beside someone who will give me the utmost blessings in this world. And you find this mu'mineen wish to be buried beside other mu'mineen. And one of the duties and one of the rights of a Muslim is to be buried in a Muslim cemetery beside Muslims. And of course you find that sign would be written on our tombstone, rest in peace. How beautiful it is. Sometimes you find husbands and wives, you go to some cemeteries, Mr. X and Mrs. Y, husband and wife, alhamdulillah, they found their peace now in the qabr. They're now buried right next to each other. Reminds me of one of the speakers said that one day his wife passed away and they were carrying the janazah of the wife towards the qabristan, towards the maqbara. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, shoulder to shoulder, and they were reciting the du'as and the adhkar, and then suddenly this young man, he started to smile a bit, and then they said to him, why are you smiling a bit? He said, for years and years and years, my husband, me as the husband, and my wife, we used to walk in the street, we used to walk through this bazaar, but this is the first time we are shoulder to shoulder and we're not shouting and arguing with one another. We're quiet. And when we go to the qabr, we wish to be with someone who will be full of blessings, barakah, peaceful, happy. Husbands wish to be with their wives, with their family members. Many wish to be buried with their parents in the same vicinity. And many wish to be buried in that jar, in that area, who they are beside the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. In the cities of the Ahlul Bayt, in Mashhad al-Rida alayhi salam, in Qom's, Fatima al-Ma'suma's shrine, beside her shrine, in the holy city of Najaf al-Ashraf, in the holy city of Medina, in various holy cities, in the city of Makkah al-Mukarramah. And you find Sheikh al-Kafi, Sheikh Ahmad al-Kafi narrates this, that on one occasion, a man in Yazd, his friend had passed away, and he saw his friend in his dream, and he saw he was in a very difficult status. He said, Khair, how was it in the qabr? How was adab al-qabr? How was su'al munkar wa nakir? How was the status there? He said, pray for me. The difficulty of the torment of the qabr was extremely painful. The questioning, pray for the nur to be blessed within the qabr. After some time, he saw him again. He saw him full of light, illuminating. He said, Khair, what's happened? He said, Alhamdulillah, we've gone through the difficult moments and we've been blessed. He said, what's happened? What do you mean? He said, last night in this maqbara, in this graveyard that we are in this cemetery that we are in, a lady was buried in this place, in this vicinity, right next to my qabr. He said, Khair, so? He said, I don't know who she is, but all I can tell you, after they buried her and after the family left, Aba Abdullah al-Hussein came and asked for forgiveness of her and all those who are the jar of this lady, all those who are within the vicinity, the neighbors of this lady in the qabr. Who is she? He said, I have no idea who she is, but all I know, she is the wife of Al-Haddad, the blacksmith in the town. He went to the town in Yazd. He asked, Ashraf, Haddad, blacksmith. He saw there was a sign of the Fatiha ceremony in the family gathering. He went to the family gathering, the Fatiha ceremony. He saw the husband by the door. He said, oh man, oh blacksmith, oh Haddad, your wife that we're doing the Fatiha ceremony for, you're doing the Fatiha ceremony for, how many times in the year did she go to Karbala of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein? He said, she didn't go to Karbala. He said, your wife, how many times did she have majalis in the house for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein? He said, she didn't. We didn't. We were unable to have every time majalis for Abu Abdullah. Why are you asking me about my wife? What's happened? He informed of the dream that he had about his friend and about the wife and about Abu Abdullah al-Hussein blessing that group. He said, I'll tell you what. Every night before my wife would go to sleep, before she would go to sleep, she'll go to the balcony. She'll direct herself towards Abu Abdullah. Where? From Yazd. She would direct herself towards Karbala and she would say, Assalamu alayka ya Abu Abdullah. Assalamu ala al-Husayn wa ala Ali ibn al-Husayn wa ala awlad al-Husayn wa ala ashab al-Husayn. Look at the great blessing and barakah that she had. And therefore, not only we wish to have the best of neighbors in this world, not only we wish to have the best of neighbors in the qabr, but we wish to have the best of neighbors in the hereafter in Jannah. Rasulullah says about the true followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says, Ya Ali, wa shi'atuka ala manabira min nur, مبيضة وجوههم حولي في الجنة وهم جيراني. Oh Ali, your Shia have a great status. Your followers, the followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the followers of Rasulullah. What's the great status? They are on raised platforms. Manabira min nur. Mubyadatan wujuhum, their faces glowing full of nur. They shall be in Jannah. But what stage in Jannah? Where in Jannah? Wahum jirani. And they shall be the jar of Rasulullah, the neighbor of Rasulullah in Jannah, in paradise. Or for example, Rasulullah says, Kafilul yatim, the one who takes care of a yatim in this world, takes care of an orphan in this world, funds an orphan, sponsors an orphan, makes an orphan happy, a yatim happy, takes care of an orphan. Ana wa kafilul yatim kahatain fil jannah. He says, I and the sponsor of a yatim shall be like this in Jannah. And he points to these two fingers, saying that we shall be close proximity in Jannah. Or the one who said, who is going to be my neighbor in Jannah? Who? Prophet Musa alayhi salam asked Allah, who is going to be my jar, my neighbor in Jannah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed Prophet Musa, your neighbor in Jannah is the qassab, is the butcher, the neighbor of Prophet Musa in Jannah. Prophet Musa went to see him. Oh butcher. The butcher did not recognize this is Prophet Musa. Normal butcher. Why is he so special? Why is he going to be my neighbor in Jannah? He said, can I come visit you at home? Let me see what's so special about him. He went to his house. What's so special about him? He saw at the time of having food at the sufra, every time the butcher would be there beside the Prophet, he would go to another room, he would feed someone, he would take care of someone, and that elderly lady would raise her hands in du'as towards the sky. That man came back, the butcher came back. Prophet Musa asked him, Oh man, who was that lady? He said, that's my mother, my elderly mother. I take care of her, I feed her, I provide for her. He said, oh man, what did she say in her dua when she raised her hands towards the sky? He said, every day when I take care of my mother, my mother raises her hands towards the sky and says, Ya Allah, allow my son for his ihsan, for his goodness towards me, to be the neighbor of Prophet Musa in Jannah. Prophet Musa looked at him and said, smiled. He said, tell your mother, the dua of the mother is mustajab. The dua of the mother is accepted. Tell her that her dua has truly been accepted. Allah has informed me that me and you and I shall be neighbors of Prophet Musa. You're going to be the neighbor of Prophet Musa. I, Prophet Musa, in Jannah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the best of neighbors and to take care of our neighbors and to be the best of neighbors in this dunya, in the qabr and in akhirah. May Allah forgive us all and take the best of consideration and care towards all our dear ones. Haqqullah wa haqqun nas.